Dr. Shashi Tharoor joining us on the broadcast. Dr. Shashi Tharoor, thank you very much for your time here on Mirror Now. Can I start by asking you what you think of this year's budget? Look, the urban middle class is at least smiling this afternoon, and so are you by the looks of it. But then you're always smiling.
Only if you have a job and the salary and it's around 12 lakhs, yes, you can be happy. But the truth is that the budget does nothing for the vast numbers of unemployed in our country. Sadly, we have large numbers of people who are, unfortunately, a world record level of unemployment, particularly youth unemployment. We also hold the world record for the college-educated unemployed, and there's nothing in the budget that gives them any hope of jobs. In fact, the employment-linked incentive schemes that were announced in last year's budget have been stuck. And the government simply couldn't even spend the budget that they announced for 10,000 crores. They spent about 6,000 and change, and they didn't deliver any job opportunities. So they haven't even mentioned it this year. But the problem we have is that there is a very large number of people for whom the key they were looking for is something that will assure them the prospect of jobs. There's nothing there. But yes, you can get good headlines for your Delhi and Bihar elections. In fact, the people of Andhra Pradesh must be feeling hard done by that they didn't have their election this year too. And this is coming, by the way, from a party that wants one nation, one election, which is quite hilarious. Because clearly the message they've sent out now is if your election is going to come after this year's budget, we'll give you freebies this year. If your election is next year, you'll get money next year, etc. I mean, what kind of message is this from the one nation, one election folks? But anyway, we'll have to see. I'm worried about some of the specifics as well, because we'll have to wait for the income tax bill proposed for next week that Mr. Sitharaman mentioned, because we have no idea what the fine print is going to be. Will some of the deductions be changed? Will the traditional approaches to your tax savings become less relevant? Who knows? We'll just have to see. And the other things are the big ticket items she mentioned. I mean, she mentioned things like India becoming a global hub for toys and the footwear and leather sector getting a big focus product scheme to boost productivity. I mean, big, bold words and promises. But if you look at the actual investment last year, when both these items were under the PLI scheme, in PLI, they had 6,200 crores for electronics and IT. They had 0.01 crore for toys and 0.01 crore for footwear. So suddenly they've got this big headline. I think we'll have to wait and see how it actually works out in practice.
I've seen some of the opposition reactions come in, Dr. Tharoor. They're saying it's a hopeless budget. Even for the middle class, there is nothing. That's not true. There is something here for the middle class. And it's not just for people who earn up till 12 lakh rupees. The benefits will go all the way up to 50 lakh, 60 lakh rupees. At least there will be some saving. And any saving is better than no saving. But I want to ask you whether you have seen any positives in the budget. You are saying there is nothing about generating jobs, which is a concern area for our economy. But the government and the finance minister have spoken about small and medium industries. Quite extensively, might I add.
Yeah, but the problem is, again, in practice, how that's going to work out. I mean, if you look at the fact that there's really no clue where investment is going to come from, we have a stagnant investment climate within the country, and we have FDI leaving the country in droves. So when you've got a situation where in the last year alone, $23,000 millionaires migrated out of India and became NRIs, we are actually worried about whether this government is able to have the kind of approach that will breed the trust that the chief economic advisor talked about in the economic survey as lacking in this country. And that lack of trust is very serious. There's no question about that, because we need absolutely to bring investment before we can do any manufacturing, and we can't need manufacturing before we can generate exports, and we need both before we can talk about meaningful growth. Our growth estimates have already come down from last year this time. The prospect of Viksit Bharat will keep receding if we're unable to grow at a larger percentage than we're growing right now. There may be improvements in their approach. I don't want to be completely sort of raining on their parade, but there are just too many worries about the unaddressed portions of our concerns. And certainly investment is one leading to growth. There's also genuine concern about how do we give people an incentive to invest. As you know, the government's favoring these so-called national champions. The few companies that are getting monopolies and duopolies in a number of sectors have discouraged other businesses from coming into those sectors fearing that the investment climate will be tilted in favor of those big guys. Now, the difficulty with all of this is if we don't have investment coming in, we simply won't generate jobs. And jobs go down to the core problem of the way in which this country is hurting. And people, ordinary people, are hurting.
Dr. Tharoor, my last question to you. I know you're in a bit of a rush. There is merit when the opposition says there is a reason why within the first 5 minutes Bihar was mentioned by Nirmala Sitharaman, the Makhana board as it were, and then she went on to mention Bihar 6 more times. Of
That's
course,
right.
there is merit when you say it's linked to the election, which is scheduled.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
there is merit in that. Absolute merit in that because
comes to Bihar.
Bihar goes to the elections. I get that. There's merit to that. But is there any merit when the opposition says that this tax relief is coming right ahead of the Delhi elections? Because honestly, if the government wanted some help, they would have announced this tax relief in 2024. They could have done with help then.
Well, the fact of the matter is that right now, Delhi is one electorate in our country where salaried middle class would account for a larger portion of the electorate than the national electorate as a whole in 24 would have. In the national picture, salaried middle class is sadly a fairly small percentage. I mean, as you know, 63% of our population is still engaged in agriculture. So I think that in the national 24 budget, that wasn't the priority for them. Delhi and Bihar are clearly targeted in this budget with electoral gains in mind, and it is too cynical, honestly. I mean, for a government that is at the same time trying to preach the virtues of one nation, one election, this cynical manipulation of the tax of the budget and the electoral calendar doesn't suggest that the message they're sending is going to encourage people to support one nation, one election. You think Andhra is going to support that now? They want their bite of the cherry as an ally, and they have only witnessed Bihar getting all the spoils.
Okay, Dr. Tharoor, we'll leave it there for the moment. Thank you very much for your time here on Mirror Now. Good to have you.
Thank you, Shreya. Thanks.